thanks to modern science and the patriarchy, it still falls on the woman.
I want to talk about your second failure, and I'm so glad that you chose it because I think it leads on from what we've been discussing about your body and what our bodies can and can't do, and what we expect them to do, and what society tells us they should do as
Mm,
women. And your second failure is your failure to conceive your kids naturally. So you had IVF, and also your failure to have a natural birth.
yeah.
And the reason I'm so pleased that you're talking about this is because I also went through several rounds of fertility treatment, had recurrent miscarriages, and don't have children.
Mm.
And I'm at peace with that now. It's been a long journey, but I'm at peace with it. And that's why I'm really grateful to have this conversation with you, that you still feel this failure, even though you have your daughters. So please tell me about your journey.
First of all, sorry,
Thank
because
you.
it's
That's the most
awful.
beautiful thing you could possibly
It's
say.
so it's so harrowing doing
Yeah.
it, and then like no, and it's always in the background. No one really knows it's happening,
Yeah.
and it's quite a lonely thing, I think, to do. Even if you've got a partner, you're still alone in it because it's all on you, isn't it?
Very, very isolating.
Mm. So what happened with me was I always thought or felt that quite fertile, and I had a situation when I was very young where I sort of looked at penis and became pregnant. So I just thought I was like on high alert my whole life about
Mm.
not conceiving after that. And then we had some issues. We knew quite quick, or I knew quite quickly there was problems because I'm a bit witchy anyway, and I just thought there was something. And then found out that what actually happened was the beginning of our fertility treatment. It was because it was on his side that there was fertility problems, but thanks to modern science and the patriarchy, it still falls on the woman.
Yes.
No
Yeah.
funding or research has been done to allow the man who's got fertility problems to take any sort of physical responsibility for that. So it's the same process as if it was my issue, but it began like that, and then I then had an ectopic pregnancy with the first
God, I'm sorry.
one, and then my fertility starts going because I've had one tube damaged. So
Mm.
then it's like every other month. And then anyway, so the second time did work. And so I was lucky because I actually had two viable pregnancies, even though one was ectopic, quite quickly. And then the birth was really difficult. It was like actually unbearable. And the kind of long version is in my book. But it started off with PROMS, which is called premature rupture of membranes, where you're sort of in labour, and that was at only 5 months. No, 7. God, sorry. Yeah, I was 6 months pregnant, I think. It's in my
That's so
book. I've written it down.
scary.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so I was leaking, and they were like, "You can't. You're gonna have to induce. We're gonna have a premature baby." And I just kind of like was really defiant that I didn't want to do that, and I basically had bed rest, and I was just drinking 4 liters of water a day, and I kept her in for a month, just laying down, drinking 4 liters of water a day, not a month, a day, to kind of replenish the lost waters. And then eventually the birth itself went terribly wrong, and lots of things, like we all have this idea that we're going to have this natural birth and it's all going to be perfect, and I'm mother nature, and like, even I've written about this in my book, they tell you that you put the baby on you and it finds its way to the breast. Absolute nonsense. I don't know who came up with that, but it's
Mm.
rubbish. It
Mm.
doesn't. They just lay there looking at you crying.
Mhm.
And then but then eventually, so it all just went a bit wrong, and after 21 hours of labor and like a lot of kind of stuff and no sleep for a week, I had 7 hours sleep in 7 days. They had I had an emergency cesarean, which also caused me later on fertility problems as well, and then a bit of postpartum psychosis because of lack of sleep. So I like was hallucinating. It was all just awful.
That's so traumatic.
And then I think I was probably depressed for a couple of years without realizing, because the weird thing about depression is that I didn't realise was that you don't, or any mental illness, is when it's legitimate mental illness, you're very unaware of the fact you've got it.
Mm.
And it's only when it passes that I realised that I had been mentally unwell. And so I think that took its toll on my relationship, which this album's about. And then like later, you know, I wanted a second child, and then I had 3 failed transfers, like one more egg collection, 3 failed transfers, and then the 4th one worked, and then I was just so kind of headstrong about it in a way. And I speak about that in my book, about how like a woman doing IVF becomes almost like in this trance-like state of like, that's what I want. And a lot of stuff falls by the wayside, like your emotional life, your relationship, because you're just so like focused on this thing in quite an obsessive way. You don't even like consider what might be lost, or a woman's identity becoming a mother, or anything. You're just about having these babies anyway. Eventually I've been very fortunate and grateful that I had the second one, but even then it's only recently, because that child's now 2, and I didn't realize that I'd been quite depressed even after that, and actually wonder, I always think like, would my relationship have broken down if I'd have medicated? Like, this stuff doesn't get talked about enough. I feel like maybe it was all because of it.
You said that you're a bit witchy, so I imagine you believe in some sort of universal power. Do you think it had to be this way in that respect? Like, how do you feel now being a mother, given everything that you went through and what you had to deal with and the pain you had to suffer along the way and what was lost, as well as the enormous fortune that you have these 2 beautiful daughters? But like, how does that feel?
I just wonder whether it's a mindset. Like, I see people who have careers and lives where they want stuff and it sort of just happens. And I don't know if I've been so used to like everything being quite difficult. Like, I set my mind to something, it becomes a challenge, and I just really get headstrong about it. I don't know if that, like you say, like it could only be that way. Like, it was funny because when I had the kids, my manager, who's been my manager since the beginning of my career, called, and he was like, yeah, but it wouldn't be you if it was easy, would it? And he said that, and I was like, oh my God, you're right, actually. Like, it's always, whatever's happened, it's been difficult. And I think that goes for a lot of people. But sometimes from the outside, you look at the world and you think, oh, like, I know people who said, oh, we're going to start trying for a baby, and 3 weeks later they're pregnant. Or, you know, like people who sit in interviews in the music business and say, yeah, we just wrote this song in 10 minutes and it's a global smash.
Yeah.
You're just like, like, how's that happened to you?
Thanks for tuning in. And if you found this video enjoyable, be sure to check out the full episode on your preferred podcast platform. And make sure you're following How to Fail on social media for additional content and updates.